Okay, data center construction across North America clearly accelerating rapidly, as I guess it is pretty much globally. But how has the scale and complexity of today's megasites changed the fire risk profile compared to facilities built maybe, I don't know, a decade ago or so?
Sure. So the sites and the need for data storage is growing right rapidly each. So some of these sites are 500,000 square feet plus, with sometimes the trailer being anywhere from like a quarter of a mile to a half a mile away from the nearest data hall. Right. If there's an emergency inside of one of those halls, you're talking a 5 minute ride in a cart just to get there to assess the situation. So and then on top of that, you have complex high voltage systems, generators, ion battery storage. And then, as the sites grow larger, the incidents escalate as well, right? And they can affect a wider area as, like I said, they grow. So,
Okay, and in terms of, I think you point out that between 2017 and 2021, as a sort of sample selection of years, the US fire departments responded to thousands of fires on construction sites each of those years.
mhm.
We've clearly got this AI-driven expansion accelerating since, I suppose, the last couple of years, 2023, etc. How has the risk landscape evolved specifically when it comes to data center projects? Do you got any sort of thoughts on that?
Yeah, so roughly it's 4,000 plus per year, right? Per the NFPA data that these fire departments are responding to issues on those sites. Um, since 23, AI expansion has increased build speed, scale, and asset concentration, right? So more current high value projects do mean greater insurance and operational exposure, right? So the more that they're spending on these greater sites, the higher the risk and the value of that risk in turn as well.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think projects frequently approach the $1 billion sort of mark, and then there's the insurance exposure rising. So, do you have a handle or some idea of the real financial and operational consequences when it comes to sort of inadequate fire risk controls on these modern data center builds we're talking about?
Yeah. So, well, really on any construction site, right? You've got potential loss of life, right? And with that comes a high dollar value for insurance premiums and payouts. So you've got not only that, but then you have severe delay, right? Rebuild costs after the fire incidents. Insurance premiums and coverage restrictions rise as well as a direct result, right? And then, not to mention, these general contractors operate sometimes on a global scale, right? So, reputational damage as well as penalties would come along with that as well inherently.
Okay, and one other thing that's happening, data centers increasingly being built in rural and smaller town locations rather than these traditional, urban hubs. Uh, Does that introduce sort of new safety and emergency response challenges with this geographic shift? Yeah, what happens if you like?
Yeah. So, well, if the more rural the rural, I should say, the more rural the site is, the longer it's going to take emergency response to arrive on the scene, right? To even assess what's happening. Um, so I was on one. It was in the middle of Ohio, and it was quite literally in the middle of Ohio. There was nothing around, right? And this site was absolutely massive. Um, the trailer was one of the ones where it was like a quarter of a mile to a half a mile away from the job site alone. So within that space, again, it would take a lot longer for emergency response to get there. Communication and evaluation challenges across those distances are inherent. So it's the more, just with anything, the more complex the structure, the more complex the geographical location, the more difficult it's going to be to get somebody there to help, right?
Yeah, and if you add in, I think you observe that attitudes towards minimum code compliance are potentially still a significant barrier. So
Mhm.
your thoughts as to why some owners and contractors still treat fire safety as a sort of cost rather than a core project value, and how can that sort of attitude be changed, or what needs to change?
So minimum compliance is often seen as sufficient under cost and schedule pressure, right? So everybody wants quality, right? They want deliverables, and they want that within an appropriate time frame, right? Whatever the contract dictates. So that schedule puts an immense amount of pressure on these folks to have to deliver all of those things in a timely manner, right? So along with that, unfortunately, instead of going above and beyond code compliance and checking that box is just a way to move on to the next task, right? Temporary protection measures, they're frequently cut due to tight budgets, right? I am seeing a slight turn in that, where uh, they're accounting for additional measures within the budgets, right? If we get there in time. So, but overall, the shift is definitely needed to view fire safety as a core risk, um, as opposed to optional spend.
Yeah, and in terms of some of the practicalities, I mean, during construction, the sites frequently, I guess, would include high voltage systems, generators, and maybe even temporary lithium-ion battery storage. So, why would that sort of early build phase or phases be particularly vulnerable from a fire safety perspective?
So, I mean, it's not breaking news that lithium ion is a reliable source of power, but it's also if it becomes unmanageable, it becomes a probably one of the highest risks that a site could run into, right? Um, on top of that, permanent suppression systems don't go in until pretty much electricity is running to the building and they have a permanent setup there. High workforce activity with hot works specifically, right? A lot of these buildings are made out of metal, so you have an ignition source and fuel right there directly. So.
And in terms of data center sort of fire codes, I don't think there are any specific ones for the data center sector, but it'd be good to understand how National Fire Protection Association guidance, and I think it's NFPA 241, which is the particular one, how does that address the realities, if you like, of modern megasite construction?
So it gives them the core work, right? No two sites are really going to be the same. You're going to have different workforces, different hurdles, right? But it does give them a core to work from and build out on. It supports scalable temporary protection on these large complex sites, but at the same time, it's also kind of up to not necessarily interpretation, but more so adoption, right? So that goes back to saying, well, this is what the code says the minimum is, so this is what we're going to do, as opposed to forward thinking. What can we do to prevent the what ifs?
Yeah, and in terms of 2026 updates to the NFPA 241, you think there are particular or key changes that data center developers and contractors need to be aware of or preparing for now? What's coming down the line?
So with meetings that we've had, I can say that for sure developers should prepare for stronger documentation needs as well as accountability for that. Um, the 26 revision to 241 is expected to tighten those protection rules, right? So after hours, oversight with security and detection will be not necessarily mandatory, but it will be, much stronger recommended, right? And so again, it would be up to the local authorities to push that onto the sites and really get a stronger grip on what that looks like.
Okay, so it seems as if there is something of a clear shift from fire safety being as you mentioned earlier, sort of regulatory tick box exercise to more of an active leadership responsibility. Any thoughts as to what an effective ownership looks like in practice, particularly for a fire prevention program manager role?
Yeah. So the leadership with fire protection, I mean, it's not none of this is new to these folks, right? So understanding code and being able to digest it in a comprehensive way, and then put that best foot forward into practice on the job sites. Continuous monitoring, training, review, definitely essential for accountability as far as that goes.
And traditional fire watches and manual systems have some obvious limitations. So, your thoughts as to how wireless and the IoT connected fire detection systems are transforming the temporary fire protection during construction?
Sure. So these sites are always changing, right? As they grow, there's a wall here today that wasn't there yesterday. Our concrete people are here today; they're not here tomorrow. What wireless does is it gives the ability to change with those sites and scale as needed. So that wall that wasn't here yesterday, that's here today, is an obstacle. All we need to do is move this piece of wireless tech 1 foot to the left, right, back, forward, whatever, and then you have your system fully operational. Then it allows the comfortability to change as needed. If there was, I mean, it's super rare occurrence, but let's say that there was a change in architecture that they had to adhere to because something on the site changed. Uh, the wireless the wireless systems allow that ability to again change as needed.
And in terms of the sort of summary of the situation, I think you're arguing that the industry needs to move from reactive compliance to proactive prevention. Um, and what does that mean in terms of the practical steps that project teams can take today to begin to make that shift, in a timely fashion? Because obviously it's a growing concern.
Yeah, investing in, like I said, scalable technology. What tools are out there that can make the job easier for documentation, training, understanding the issues that you face on a daily business or a daily basis. Drills, data, clear ownership, and drive for that proactive prevention. Right. We're not these sites adapt to tool changes, right? And so those tools make the jobs easier for the folks to do at the end user level. So why make things more difficult when there is technology to embrace and help make those sites safer and perform better overall?
And I'd just be interested to know, yourselves, Ramtech, what is it? Where do you fit in this sort of this landscape of the fire safety issues that are certainly an increasing problem for the data center?
Uh, Education. I think that it's super important that these folks do realize um, that there are these things out there to help them better scale and better understand their site at a micro level, right? Well, not becoming overburdened with all of that uh, data, I guess, right? Where I feel I fit in is that educational piece. It's I feel better knowing that we're doing good work and putting that best foot forward with showing them this is what can help you make life easier on a daily basis at that scale.
Again, maybe just in winding up, I don't know whether it's something you've already said or something different, but if there's one sort of key message or takeaway when it comes to fire safety at scale for the data center owners, the contractors, what would that message be? Or, maybe there's a couple of things.
Um, Fire safety at a megasite scale should be a core project risk, not a compliance task. That proactive prevention is the most essential piece in safeguarding those high value infrastructure pieces, whether realistically it be data or a high rise or an apartment complex. Really, like it shouldn't. That protection of those people, end users, laborers, contractors in general. Again, it shouldn't be a compliance task. It should be really take a look and what can we do to make things better and safer for everyone.
Excellent. Well, thanks. It's been great to chat and some brilliant insights into the world. Clearly, as you say, I think the data center industry is almost the biggest in the world, isn't it?
Yep.
When you do it by the money being spent on it at the moment. So it's clearly an important sector, and fire safety obviously critically important. So, Aaron, really appreciate the time you spent sharing your insights. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Philip. It was great to meet you.